Tonight on Brian Ross Investigates.
I cry a lot, and no one knows how much I cry.
She was 14 years old when her swimming coach began to abuse her.
I lost my innocence.
Her coach now serving a 29-year prison sentence.
We both knew that we shouldn't be doing it, and we didn't stop. I didn't stop.
Only the latest of almost 200 USA swimming coaches implicated in a growing sex abuse scandal that critics say the sport continues to ignore.
They treat sexual abuse as a public relations problem as opposed to a child safety problem.
And the president of USA Swimming doesn't want to talk about it.
Mr. Hinchy, really?
What will it take to stop it? We'll hear from Olympic gold medalist swimmer Nancy Hogshead Makar, standing by in Florida. Plus our shout-out to the reporter in California who helped to expose widespread sexual abuse, even as supporters of USA Swimming denied there was a problem.
They prioritized, protecting the brand, winning a lot of medals, generating a lot of tens of millions of dollars in corporate sponsorship, and not protecting the athletes at the grassroots or at any level.
From the Law&Crime studios in New York City's Herald Square, this is Brian Ross Investigates. Good evening and welcome. Tonight, the dark side of one of America's most celebrated sports. USA Swimming has helped produce a steady roster of athletes who regularly bring home Olympic gold for America. But like USA Gymnastics, the sport has also been a place where sexual predators, coaches, have abused hundreds of young athletes. And as we found out, USA Swimming has been very slow to do much about it.
I feel guilty all the time. I cry a lot. And no one knows how much I cry because I bottle it up for when no one's looking.
She was 14 when her swimming coach began to sexually abuse her.
And it physically and mentally hurts not to cry.
Her coach was 43 years old at the time. Nathan Weddell, described on the website of the local swim club he owned as someone who loves the sport of swimming and the dedication it develops in young people.
He turned me into somebody that no one around me could recognize. He groomed me into somebody that I'm not.
When the coach was brought in for questioning by police in Raleigh, North Carolina,
I don't know what it's about.
he claimed he had no idea why he was there.
In charge, you have warrants for arrest for 7 indecent liberties and 6 statutory sex offense charges.
She had been swimming since, I believe, about the age of 6 with the same coach. So he had a long time to coach her, got to know the family. Through that exposure and what we now know is grooming over a long period of time, was able to gain access to her to ultimately sexually abuse her.
Lawyers Daniel Barker and Ian Richardson represent the girl and her family, and they are now taking the governing body of the sport, USA Swimming, to court, claiming USA Swimming has failed to protect their client and hundreds of other vulnerable young swimmers from predators like Nathan Weddell.
You've got coaches who see these people that look like grown women that are running around in swimsuits, and I think that just invites some of the bad behavior that we have unfortunately seen with USA Swimming coaches.
Weddell ultimately confessed to what he had done.
What did y'all do? Besides kiss. I mean, there was some touching of the breasts and things like that. What was 6? Yes. On whose part? Oh, mine, not hers.
And he claimed he and his 14-year-old swimmer were in love with each other.
It was a mental, emotional thing. We both knew that we shouldn't be doing it, and we didn't stop. I didn't stop.
Police also arrested Weddell's assistant swim coach and girlfriend, Shannon Foster, who authorities say knew he was sexually abusing the young swimmer. She was put on 2 years probation.
Raleigh swim coach facing serious charges accused of...
The arrest shocked the community.
Nathan Weddell faces multiple counts of sex crimes with an underage girl.
He appeared by video and asked for a court-appointed lawyer. Court documents show this had been going on for nearly 5 months.
For the officials who run USA Swimming, it was yet another threat to their well-cultivated public image. A multi-million-dollar operation funded by large corporate sponsors. It oversees some 3,000 swim teams around the country, the pipeline for future U.S. Olympic swim teams.
It's all about keeping Mercedes-Benz and their corporate sponsors and NBC happy and protecting this image of Michael Phelps and Katie Ledecky. They prioritized, protecting the brand, winning a lot of medals, and not protecting the athletes.
Representing the United States of America, Michael Phelps.
But for all the heroes and Olympic glory of USA Swimming, officials have known for more than a decade about a very dark side. Hundreds of young swimmers who were sexually abused by their coaches. Cases including one of the country's top swim coaches, Shawn Hutchinson, who was banned last year after Olympic medalist Ariana Kukar went public with allegations he had abused her.
Organizations like USA Swimming have long been in a position to deter, detect, and discipline sexual abuse, and have done little or nothing to do such in an effort to protect their public image. By doing nothing, it enabled Shawn Hutchinson to abuse me for a decade.
In fact, the USA Swimming website includes a list of almost 200 coaches who have been suspended or banned from the sport because of allegations or convictions for sexual abuse. The list now includes Nathan Weddell of North Carolina.
No, it was not okay, but we did it anyway.
The lawsuit being brought over Weddell's case cites an ABC News 2020 story that I reported 9 years ago as an example of USA Swimming failing to deal with the problem. The 2020 story detailed a slew of similar sexual abuse cases and an interview with the then president of USA Swimming, Chuck Whyco, who said he saw no reason to apologize to the young victims.
Have you apologized to any of the young women victims?
You feel I need to apologize to them?
Whyco later did apologize and promised to make things right.
After that report, they had told ABC News and me they were going to clean it up.
Right.
Has that happened?
It has not happened.
And this continues?
Continues today.
And this is 9 years later.
Yes, sir.
The lawsuit alleges that USA Swimming failed to follow through on recommendations from its own child safety experts 5 years ago to require mandatory training for parents and young athletes to help them spot possible predators with what were called safe sport clubs.
How many clubs in this state, in this country, were safe sport recognized or certified?
There were no safe sport certified or safe sport recognized clubs in North Carolina.
Not a single one?
Not a single one. I actually looked this morning and still can't find one within 100 miles of Raleigh, North Carolina.
So what good is this program if nobody's following it?
That's a great question.
And nationwide, when we checked on the USA Swimming website, looking at a 100-mile radius around the 25 largest cities, we counted only 45 such safe sport certified teams. Out of the 3,000 teams, only about 1.5%. Yet in testimony before Congress last year, the current president of USA Swimming, Tim Hinchey, described the Safe Sport Club program as one of its major initiatives to protect swimmers.
We have a number of new initiatives underway, and we are vetting even more. The Safe Sport Recognized Club program will enhance athlete protection efforts at all levels, especially the local level.
Hinchey declined numerous requests from Law&Crime to appear in our report. And when we caught up with him at USA Swimming's annual gala fundraiser in New York, he was not very pleased to see us.
These are serious questions about more young women have been abused. You saw the cases in North Carolina.
I've been very good with and spoken very honestly to Congress, and I'll continue to do that, and we'll do everything we can to protect our athletes.
Can you tell me right now how many?
I'm not going to speak to right now. But
why not? Why can't you talk?
Because I'm here hosting people.
I know, but these are important questions. Sir, how many recognized safe sport clubs exist today? Can you answer that question, sir?
They treat sexual abuse as a public relations problem as opposed to a child safety problem. We think it's a child safety issue.
The lawyers say neither the girl abused by Weddell nor her parents ever saw or even heard about training videos that might have alerted them to his behavior.
I think if the parents had seen that and in conjunction with seeing it had training about what grooming behavior looks like, I think we wouldn't be sitting here.
Weddell pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts and is now serving a sentence of up to 29 years in state prison in North Carolina. He says he is sorry about what happened to the girl he abused.
I've messed up her life, and I didn't want that to happen.
But it did.
I struggle with depression and being anxious. Some days are better than others for me, and I wish that none of this had ever happened. I've lost my love of swim. I lost 5 months of my life, and I lost my innocence.
We repeatedly asked USA Swimming to respond to our questions, but they told us they did not wish to participate. In court papers, the group says it has no legal responsibility to the young women abused by Nathan Weddell and denies any wrongdoing. Next, we'll talk with 2 people who can help us understand what's going on here. Olympic gold medalist Nancy Hogshead Makar and attorney Robert Allard when we come back. We continue our investigation now into the sexual abuse scandal involving swimming coaches connected to USA Swimming. And we're joined now by Nancy Hogshead Makar, the winner of 3 Olympic swimming gold medals during the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics and founder of Champion Women, a group that advocates for the protection and support of girls and women in sport. And by Robert Allard, a lawyer in San Jose who has led the way in legal action on behalf of young people who have been sexually abused by their coaches. Thank you both for being here. Ms. Hogshead Makar, let me start with you. What's going on here with USA Swimming? Why do they seem to ignore this issue?
Well, you have to think of who is it that evaluates how Tim Hitchie, how the head of USA Swimming is doing, like who gives him a salary, and it's coaches, it's club owners. So they don't really like the idea that they're going to have this independent entity come in and investigate them. So they're really not, they're interested in the show, but not really interested in letting all athletes know that the major risk of harm to them is their coach. And that's hard. We at Champion Women, we've come up with a way to teach athletes, even 7-year-olds, here's how you teach about appropriate boundaries. Here's how you teach about, what a coach sort of will and will not do, so that the hair on the back of their neck comes up long before they get to the idea of good touch, bad touch.
Robert Allard, let me ask you, this continues to be an issue. It's been an issue since we started reporting on this with you 9-10 years ago. There are more cases every day, it seems.
Just last week, we filed a complaint locally here near San Jose, California, in Stockton, where a 25-year-old swim coach for a period of 8 to 9 months was having sexual intercourse with a 13-year-old. And all the while, he was demonstrating very obvious signs of predatory behavior on the pool deck in front of all of the club officials, including putting his arm around her, hugging her, stretching her provocatively, calling her babe, driving her to and from practices by himself. All obvious red flags, which anybody who was properly trained would know was a predator in their midst, and no one did anything about it, and it resulted in, fortunately, him recently being arrested.
But this continues. Here's a question from our control room executive producer, Rhonda Schwartz.
These predators seem very good at what they do. Is it really something you can blame USA Swimming for? What really could be done about this?
Yeah, one of the things that somebody I admire very much, Scott Reed with the Orange County Register talked about, it was that they didn't prioritize sexual abuse. I would go further than that. I would say that they actively tried to avoid it. When you look at their legal position in court, it is, we don't owe a legal duty that extends to that kid. So if somebody's abused, they just don't think it's their problem. We just got a legislation passed last year that was supposed to eradicate that, supposed to keep the USA Swimming and all the national governing bodies, the United States Olympic Committee, from being able to assert that defense. That they do, it gave them a legal duty to protect kids from physical, emotional, and sexual abuse.
Robert Allard, let me ask you, they talk about this safe sport program as if that's the answer, but when we checked, it's fewer than 2% of the teams around the country are certified now as safe sport. They don't make it mandatory. Is that a problem?
Yeah, that's the enforcement mechanism that is lacking. They have done, in my view, a very good job of putting some nice rules on paper. No one-on-one contact, no Skyping, no social media interactions, for example. But over and over again, the Stockton case is an example. Not only have these people not been trained on safe sport, they've never even heard of the program. So there's an obvious disconnect between the creation of the rules and the implementation of them. And when someone violates them, the enforcement mechanism is safe sport, and there are lots of problems with safe sport.
Ms. Hogshead, Makar, when you hear about these, is the outrage still there, or has it just become so normalized?
Oh, no. We're focused on it very much so. And we've got, I'm part of a broader group of people. We call ourselves the Committee to Restore Integrity to the United States Olympic Committee, where we say that in order to protect athletes, you can't hire enough people, that you need to give athletes power. If athletes had 50% of the voting power, you better believe they would direct more resources and make those clubs be safe sport compliant.
Do you think it's time for a house cleaning at USA Swimming?
Well, certainly their safe sport department. There already has been a couple of housekeepings, but I mean, I just don't think that the way that our athletes' input of being able to say this is really key to us, this is important to us. Even Michael Phelps is not able to shift the budget around so that not just coaches would know about these rules, but you need to change the culture. The culture in my era, Mitch Ivey was my coach, and he's on the banned list, and he was actively, the same kind of thing that Bob was just talking about with his client. They frame it in terms of dating, that they're having a relationship and that somebody else is jealous because of it, instead of looking at it as this is child molestation, this is abuse, this is an abuse of power, this is criminal conduct. So if there's a normalization of athletes and their coaches having these romantic and sexual relationships, that's why you've got to educate the parents and the 7-year-old.
Robert Allard, let me ask you, you've dealt with these victims, the survivors, and their parents. What's the advice you give to other parents who are watching this who have children in USA Swimming teams?
Don't just assume that by entrusting your child to a swim club that they have properly vetted their coaches and have properly supervised them. Make sure that there is, if it's safe sport, make sure that the safe sport program is implemented and followed and enforced. And look into your coach's background. There is not enough can be done to look into someone's background to make sure that they don't have any type of predatory characteristics or qualities.
Do you have more cases coming? Is this over?
I wish I could say it was over, Brian. You and I did this 9 years ago, and the calls keep coming to me over and over again, and it hasn't changed. At the ground level, which is what I deal with, the victims and the parents and the clubs, I'm not seeing a change. I'm seeing the same old, which is you have a coach who's out there doing all sorts of things which should be raising sirens and alarms, and nothing's done, and kids are getting molested. So as long as that's happening, we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
All right.
Increase awareness as much as we can and stop this problem.
Robert Allard, Nancy Hogshead Makar, thank you so much for joining us. Next, our shout out for a reporter who has led the way on this ongoing scandal when we come back. Our shout out tonight to the reporter at the Orange County Register in California who has doggedly pursued the scandal of sexual abuse at USA Swimming.
Orange County is kind of the epicenter of American swimming. So this was really in our backyard.
Scott Reed calls himself a sports investigative reporter.
And over the years, we've done a lot of investigative work on sexual abuse in USA Gymnastics. So this kind of blended into swimming.
And he quickly realized USA Swimming had a lot to hide.
It wasn't easy. It's a very closed network. It's a good old boys network. There's a handful of people that kind of run the sport, really powerful coaches. And if you want to move up in the sport, you don't want to cross.
But Reed took the time to listen to survivors, young women who had been abused, but who felt that USA Swimming was covering up what happened.
You ask these survivors about what happened to them, and you're really the first person to really give them an honest listen. And I think that was huge. I think that was a big part of our reporting.
But Reed's stories did not go over well with USA Swimming and local readers who were part of the swimming community.
A lot of pushback, nasty emails, nasty calls.
Reed's most recent story involved allegations brought against swim coach Sean Hutchinson.
He was a world championship team coach in 2009. He was on Olympic team coaching staffs, and he ran this high-profile Olympic prospect training group in Fullerton, California. And there was allegations that Hutchinson was physically involved with a swimmer he coached by the name of Ariana Kukers, who was the world champion and world record holder in the 200 IM.
During that decade, he stole many things from me, including my swimming career, my college experience, friendships, my virginity, and ultimately my Olympic dream.
USA Swimming investigated it. Eventually cleared him of any wrongdoing.
But documents Reed obtained told a much different story.
What these documents show is that the person that was hired to investigate this matter, a woman who was a 27-year veteran of the FBI, was told not to interview certain people, was not allowed to interview certain people. And so what we found was a deposition and some other documents from this investigator that proved that the finding of the investigation was just totally incorrect.
One more example of the power and importance of investigative journalism and staying on the story.
You can't let that dictate you. You have to do what's best for the reader, what's best for people you write about. A newspaper has a responsibility to its readers to sometimes tell them what they don't want to hear.
So our shout out tonight to Scott Reed at the Orange County Register. That's our report for tonight. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here again next week. Good night.